How's it going, everybody? Welcome to We Do Tech. Now, today we have the brand new Aorus 15 from Aorus, which is their first laptop that features NVIDIA's latest RTX graphics cards for real-time ray tracing. At the moment, you do get two versions of the Aorus 15. The X9, which I have here, features an RTX 2070, and then the W9 has an RTX 2060. Other than the GPUs, both are rocking an 8750H i7 CPU, 16 gigs of DDR4 memory, 512 gigs of NVMe SSD storage, a 2TB hybrid mechanical hard drive, all inside the same body. Pricing for the W9 is around 31,000 Rand on Rebeltech here in South Africa, or $1,700 on Amazon, and for the X9 that is around 36,000 Rand or $2,000. Now, taking a look at the design, you do get a dark matte aluminum body, only measuring in at just under 2.5 centimeters thick and weighs in at under 2.4 kilograms, which is actually pretty great for a laptop rocking these type of specs, but we will have to see how that might impact performance and cooling later on. On the back of the screen, you do get the Aorus logo and some nice cool lines, which are white backlit. Unfortunately, no RGB for that, and you are able to turn those backlights off, but you'll have to turn off the backlight screen as well, so they're kind of in sync. You can't just turn off the one, so yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. However, you can turn the lighting off for the two LEDs in the front bottom corners, which does add a bit of extra accent lighting, which I actually did find to be quite cool. Moving on to the display, you do get a very nice 15.6-inch Full HD IPS display, which gives you beautiful colors, thin bezels, wide viewing angles, an anti-glare coating, and most importantly, a high refresh rate at 144 Hz. So the IPS LG panel delivers very good colors, which is calibrated by X-Rite Pantone that covers 93% of the sRGB color gamut, 60% of the Adobe RGB color gamut, and 72% of the NTSC, which does make it good enough not only for gaming but also for some productivity work. Now, viewing angles again are great with the IPS display, with no noticeable color change when viewing from any of the angles on the display. But now, getting into the most important part, that 144 Hz display, which is amazing, and I'm really glad to see that more laptops are getting this high refresh rate monitors. It not only makes gaming feel so much smoother and more precise, but even in just normal everyday tasks in Windows, it just feels smoother and just kind of makes everything better in my opinion. Now, when opening up the laptop, you are greeted with a full-size 3-zone RGB backlit keyboard with a good feel both for typing and gaming, not being too heavy, having a nice short travel distance, and also not being too loud. Keyboard flex is kept to a minimum, with you really needing to press quite hard to be able to flex down on the keyboard, so build quality is really good. Just for the backlight, it is not overly bright, with the colors kind of looking a bit washed out, especially if you do have a lot of light or you're in sunlight. It's not the brightest with that. And also because it is only 3-zone RGB backlit, it is a bit limited in the RGB department, even though you do have some effects to apply. Moving down to the trackpad, you do get a nice, clean, longer-ish size surface that delivers a smooth glide and control. You do still get some physical buttons underneath the trackpad for the people who still like to have that tactile clicky feel. However, I do feel that some people would have liked if the trackpad was extended upwards a bit, because there are some space between the keyboard and the trackpad, and seeing that more laptops are getting these larger trackpads, it might have been better if they did add that. Now, getting into the I/O department, on the left side you do get a gigabit Ethernet port, a single USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A port, and a micro SD card slot, which I found to be a massive bummer towards me and all of the other creators, because most people don't use micro SD cards. Maybe if you have a GoPro, but for any creators that actually uses cameras, it's going to be a full SD card. So to me, that was kind of a bit of a waste of space. And yeah, I would have liked it if it was a standard SD card reader. But moving on to the right side, you do get two USB 3.1 Gen 1 Type A ports and then a combo audio and a mic jack. Moving to the back, there you get the rest of your I/O, where you get your DC power in, a single HDMI 2.0 port, a mini DisplayPort 1.3, a USB 3.1 Gen 2 Type C port, and then finally your Kensington lock. Now, just before we get into the benchmarks, let's quickly just go over the cooling, because it is usually a problem for such a high spec laptop, also at this size. So for the Aorus 15, you do get 6 heat pipes, 2 fans with a max RPM of 7,200 and a whole bunch of vents on the sides and then also underneath to help keep the GPU and the CPU cool. Now at around 7,200 RPM, it does get quite a bit loud, and if you do work in a office or where there's a lot of other people, it might start to annoy them just because of how loud it really gets. If you use headphones and you're on your own, it shouldn't really be a problem. Now, as for the temperatures in my room, which is not the coldest at around 24 degrees, I saw a idle temperature of the GPU at 52 degrees, CPU at 58 degrees, and fan speed at around 2,500 RPM. But under heavy CPU load, the clock speeds started at around 4 GHz, where it just hits 90C and then clocks it down to around 2.9 GHz for all 6 cores at around 80 degrees, but I never experienced any thermal throttling there. However, when putting both a CPU and a GPU under a load, this is where the thermal solution kind of starts to struggle, with the GPU ranging around 84 degrees and the CPU in the mid 90s. This is then when the CPU starts to thermal throttle at around 20%, with the clock speeds dropping to around 2.6 GHz. But that was only in synthetic benchmarks. What about in games? Well, in Battlefield 5, the GPU ranged around the 70s to 80 degrees with a GPU boost, and the CPU between the 80s to 90s at 60 to 80% load, and that also kept the clock speeds between 3.2 GHz and 4 GHz. So temperatures was quite a bit high, especially for the CPU, but it was also boosting up to around 4 GHz, so it will compensate for the temperatures, just clocking down the speeds a tiny bit. Same goes for the GPU. Now finally, getting into some of the benchmarks. The Aorus 15 was able to run pretty much every game I threw at it on ultra settings and get upwards of 90 FPS. Only in Battlefield it was under 100 FPS, so that was it. When compared to some of the other RTS desktop graphics cards I have reviewed, it'll look like the Max-Q RTX 2070 inside the Aorus 15 is right around a premium overclock desktop RTX 2060. However, when it comes to ray tracing in games, the mobile RTX 2070 with the more RT cores does outperform the desktop 2060 with a good amount. However, I do still feel that ray tracing is not really needed, where it does make your game look a lot better, with better shadows, lighting and all of that, but the impact on performance is just a bit too much, and we also don't really have a lot of games that support it as of yet. We have talked about ray tracing, which is kind of a new feature in our laptops. However, there's another new feature that is inside the Aorus 15, and that is that it's the world's first Microsoft Azure AI laptop that also has all Intel inside, which just means that it does have a bunch of components from Intel and will most likely work better together to increase performance. However, for the Azure AI, how that works is the AI actually manages all of the components to optimize your power management and usage, that it can deliver a better performance. However, how much performance are we really talking about here? From my tests, I did see some increase, nothing crazy major, but for Cinebench I did get a few extra points out there, and for Firestrike and Time Spy I definitely saw an increase in performance, giving me a decent amount of extra FPS out there. Same goes for games, nothing too crazy, but a tiny bit is a lot better than nothing. So it's definitely a nice feature to have, just because you do have it, and to get better performance, it's just better. So I do like that they did add this, and it will increase your FPS a tiny bit. But I did find that when you do enable Azure AI, when opening up certain applications which does use a more performance, for instance, just opening up a 3D Mark and not running any of the benchmarks, the fans started to spin up all the way, and I kind of had to disable it manually and wait for me to actually run the benchmarks, and then I could actually enable the max fan speed. So it was kind of a bit annoying. Maybe later on it will learn more around there, but yeah, it's a good feature to have. Then just quickly for the speakers, you do get two 2-watt speakers, unfortunately with no sub, with sound quality being decent, with the bottom side facing speakers being clear, but bass is lacking a bit, and volume wise it's not really that overly loud. You are able to use it just on its own when you're not gaming. Gaming, the fans does kind of overpower the volume, but for just normal use case, it's completely fine. But I did, however, notice that there was some distortion when playing certain music on a max volume, so that is there as well. As for the webcam and the microphone, they are subpar to me. You can see a lot of noise in the image. Sound quality also isn't too great. For just a few Skype sessions, they'll be fine, but if you were thinking of doing any streaming work with the webcam, yeah, it's definitely not going to work. Moving on to battery life, this is kind of where I did find that the Aorus 15 was really lacking, with the 62 watt-hour battery only delivering 1 hour and 15 minutes to 1 hour and 45 minutes, depending on the lighting that you have on the screen and the keyboard and so on, and only getting around 50 minutes of gaming time, and not even really heavy gaming. So that is definitely not good enough for on-the-go use, I would say. The power drain was mostly coming from the RTX 2070, which on its own needs around 50 watts more with the higher charger compared to the 2060 version. However, if you really need a more battery out of the laptop, you are able to disable the 2070 and just run it on the Intel integrated graphics, which will increase your battery life a bit more, but it is also kind of a pain to do that. And yeah, I'm a bit disappointed in the battery life there. I'm not sure if it's just my model that was that bad, because it's really not good. So hopefully it was just my model, and some people might be able to get a bit more. But yeah, that's what I was able to get out of my benchmarks. And finally, just for the charger, you do have a 230 watt power adapter that's not overly large and also not too heavy, so traveling isn't really going to be a problem. But I would have liked to see the kind of same implementation on the Aero models chargers, where they have a USB charging port on the charger itself, which is really nice to have. Just be able to charge your phone or some of your other USB charging devices, which is really useful, and it doesn't take up a USB port on your laptop. So I would have liked to actually see that, but it's also not really that big of an issue. Then wrapping up the video, the Aorus 15X9, and I believe even the W9 is going to be really good laptops for the price. I still think that RTX cards are overpriced because ray tracing and DLSS is not really where it should be yet. But possibly in around a year's time or so, it might be different, and NVIDIA will be able to sort out everything and actually make gaming and everything just better. Other than that, it is a beautiful laptop that delivers a good performance. The only two things that I think was a bit of annoying to me was the micro SD card reader. Just because I am a creator, I would have liked to have a full SD card reader and not micro SD. And then of course the second is the lackluster battery. But I do still think that a lot of people will use the Aorus 15 as a gaming laptop to take it from point A to point B and use it there. So battery life is usually anyway not good on gaming laptops, but I did feel that was a bit under most of them in the Aorus 15. But again, maybe the W9 with the 2060 will be better because the 2070 does use a bit more power. However, that is pretty much it for my review of the Aorus 15X9. Big thanks to Aorus of South Africa for sending it over for a review. If you guys want to pick one up for yourself, I will leave links in the video description where you can get it on Rebeltech if you live here in South Africa, or Amazon if you live overseas. If you guys like this review, please like, share, subscribe, and comment like always, and I will check all of you next time. Cheers, guys.